So the first vocabulary term is going to be right angle. And if you remember, a right angle is an angle that measures 90 degrees. An angle that measures 90 degrees. It's exactly 90 degrees. An angle that measures 90 degrees. And if you kind of remember the little symbol, the universal symbol for right angle is this little box inside of the angle. Our right angle box, it tells us that that is a right angle. Our second vocabulary term is going to be a leg. Now, I'm not talking about your leg connected to your foot. I'm actually talking about legs of a triangle. In this case, specifically about right triangles. The legs of a right triangle are the two sides of a right triangle the two sides of a right triangle that are connected by the right angle. So the two sides of a right triangle that are connected by the right angle. And what I mean when I say that is if I have this right triangle, here with our right angle, and if I look at the sides, this side and this horizontal side, those are the two sides of the triangle that make that right angle. So that means this is a leg and that is a leg side of the triangle. Can I move up to here? Okay, let's look at the next one. This is my favorite vocabulary word ever. Hypotenuse. Everybody try to say that. Hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. Try to say it. Hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the key to Pythagorean theorem. We're always going to be looking out for that hypotenuse. And there's two things we need to know about the hypotenuse. The first thing, super important, it is always the longest side of a right triangle. The hypotenuse will always be the longest side of the right triangle. The second super important thing we need to know is where is it located? The hypotenuse is always located opposite the right angle. It is always opposite the right angle. So if I had that same right triangle, I look for that right angle and I look for what side is across from it. And that side is our hypotenuse. That side going across is the hypotenuse. It's always going to be across from the right angle. Now, the triangles aren't always in this nice, pretty shape where it looks like it's sitting up straight. So you always want to look for that right angle and then go directly across. The last vocabulary term is square root. The last vocabulary term is square root. And its definition is a number that produces a specific quantity when multiplied by itself. And we kind of touched on this, remember back when we were talking about real numbers? If I asked you what is the square root of 36, what would you tell me? What number times itself gives me 36? Yes, it is 6. So the square root is this number. When multiplied by itself, it gives us this specific quantity. So that classifies it as a square root. But the most important part that we want to remember for Pythagorean theorem and square roots is that the square root is the inverse of squaring a number. Remember when we talked about real numbers, how 6 squared is 36, so the square root of 36 is 6, how they worked backwards and forwards? And if we remember from solving equations, inverse is just another word for opposite. So the opposite of addition is subtraction. So then that means the inverse of addition is, what's the opposite? Subtraction. So the inverse of squaring a number would be to take the square root of that number. And you'll see that more tomorrow in play as we actually solve for Pythagorean theorem. Okay, let's see how much paper I have left. I have a little bit of room here. Can I move up to here? All right, we're going to move on to the other flap. Those of you on campus to the side where it says Pythagorean theorem. Those of us at home, we are going to draw the triangle that is on their foldable. This is what is on their foldable. And we want to label the sides of the triangle. First thing I told you, we always look for the hypotenuse. Back in our notes, where did we say the hypotenuse is always located? It is the longest, yes. And where can I find that longest side? Yes, opposite. So watch, this is what I want everybody to do. Even if you're on campus, you're going to trace it. Everybody, when you see this square root, or excuse me, this right angle box, you are going to draw an arrow to the side across from it. I want to see your arrows. That tells you that this side is the hypotenuse. It is across from the right angle, so it is the hypotenuse. And that leaves the other two sides to be our legs. They make up the right angle. But we always look for the hypotenuse first. Because the legs, I don't care which side is a leg and a leg, but I do care which side is the hypotenuse. Now, if you remember from our video yesterday, he also talked about mathematical formulas when using the Pythagorean theorem. So those of you on campus, you're going to need to write this formula on that page. Those of us at home, we're going to put it in our notebook. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. This right here is the formula for Pythagorean theorem. We are going to be experts at saying this. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay? And how these two relate, the picture of my triangle and my formula relate, it relates because the A, B, and C, they talk about certain spots on this triangle. The hold on, I don't know what I did here. There we go. The hypotenuse is always labeled C. So this C in the formula is always talking about the length of the hypotenuse. It is always C. Now the legs, if you recall from yesterday's video, it doesn't matter which one we label A and which one we label B. I, out of habit, usually write my vertical as A, my horizontal as B. But it doesn't matter. A and B can be switched, but C has to be the hypotenuse. So C is always our hypotenuse. B is considered a leg measurement, and A is a leg measurement. I am out of paper, so I have to go to a new sheet. Can I transfer to a new sheet, or does anybody still copying this? Okay, I don't hear any yells. All right. What we're going to do now, those of you on campus, you have this picture already on the bottom of that foldable. Those of us at home, we're going to draw the picture. So what I want us to do first is I want us to draw a right triangle. Those of us on campus, just bear with me for a minute. The vertical side, I'm going to come out and I'm going to make a big square. And I want this square to be a 3 by 3 square. So I want this big square to have 3 columns and 3 rows. On the horizontal, the bottom of our triangle, we're going to make another big square, but this time I want it to be a 4 by 4 square. So I want us to have 4 rows and 4 columns. And we're going to pretend like Miss Marley's columns are all nice and even and pretty. And then the last coming off of this diagonal, we're going to make a little bit bigger. We're going to make a 5 by 5 square. 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now everybody has the same picture. And I want to relate this picture again to our mathematical formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We're going to prove the Pythagorean theorem right now. We're going to prove it. So remember, we said a and b are our legs and c is our hypotenuse. So first we need to identify where is our hypotenuse. So inside your triangle, draw your arrow from the right angle across. So everybody's drawing their arrow from the right angle across. And then so we can label the big 5 by 5 box as C because that's my hypotenuse. And then the other two, remember it doesn't matter if we label A or B. I'm going to make the vertical side A, my horizontal side B. So now when we look at this formula, A squared, they're talking about the square of A. So if we go look at this square that we wrote on side A, if I count up how many little boxes I have in that square, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Did you get 9 little boxes for the square of A? Yes? No? Maybe so? Yes. 9. Perfect. So when I come over here, and I'm just going to write my 9 right there below it, because that's talking about the square of A. Bring down my plus. Now let's go look at the square of B. How many boxes do we have in the square of B? Very good. 16. You count fast. I'm still numbering. So we have 16 boxes. So now if I added 9 plus 16, what is 9 plus 16? I like that. I say 25 as well. How many boxes, if I know the square of A plus the square of B should equal that square of C, how many boxes better we have? 25. Let's count them and make sure. $15. Did you get 25? Yes, so we just proved that the square of A, the square of B, is in fact equal to the square of that hypotenuse. Now watch what that means mathematically. I'm going to grab my highlighter here, and I'm going to look at the A side. Remember, I told you that A represents the side length of leg A. So if I look at how tall leg A is, how many units tall is that? 3. So if I need to do that mathematically, because I have 3 squared, or A squared, does 3 squared in fact give me 9? Yes, it does. Let's look at B. I want to now look at my side measurement for B. How many units across was B? 4. So if I say 4 squared mathematically, because that's what my formula says, does 4 squared in fact give me 16? Yes. Now we know that should equal the measurement of C squared. So how big is that line of C, that length of C. 5. And mathematically, our formula says to square it. Does 5 squared give me 25? Yes, so if we square the length of A plus square the length of B, we get the squared length of C. Bam, mic drop, we just proved Pythagorean theorem. Kiss your brain. Mwah, you're so smart. All right, so we've connected that formula, we've connected it to the picture model, and we've started to connect it mathematically. I don't want to get into solving today. I think we've done a lot, but I do want to practice identifying the parts of the triangle. So those of you on campus, the back part of your foldable where it says glue down here that's blank, we're going to draw some triangles together and we're going to label them. You're going to practice labeling the hypotenuse and the legs. All right, here's my first triangle. We're all going to draw this together. School's over? Okay. It's okay. Even though it says put glue here, we're just going to draw 2 little practice triangles. So, draw the triangle that you see on the screen with the right angle. I want you to identify the hypotenuse C and label C and then label your legs A and B. I better see some arrows. We can't identify the hypotenuse without the arrows. Woo, good job. Find your hypotenuse directly across. Hypotenuse is C. That looks great. Does it matter which sides I label A and B? Nope, as long as it's not the hypotenuse. A can be either side and B can be either side. Sometimes they don't put the triangles nice and pretty and sitting up straight. So we have to find our hypotenuse. One more. I'm going to draw a little backwards looking triangle. Label A, B, and C. Label your hypotenuse. Draw your arrow. Good, good, good. Good job. Do not forget your arrow. Find your hypotenuse first, then label your A and B.